Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have the unboxing of the Galaxy Z Fold 6. I get started. This is Samsung's most recent folding phone in horizontal format. In Mexico, it has had a launch price of 45,999 pesos. On the screen, you see the reference price in dollars, but remember that the prices here are not the same as there. Remember that in Mexico, taxes are included. So what do you think if we take the device out of the box? Because you know that normally there is not much content. Remember, it's a very thin box. So don't expect a big unboxing, but let's bring some guests to make this meeting a little bit more joyful. So let's get this box out. Owachandas. And right off the bat, we find a device that comes with two completely matte stickers on the screen. So let's take them off. As soon as I remove the first sticker, comes my first criticism because this glass is Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which may sound like a very good thing. But if Samsung already presented us with Gorilla Armor, I don't know why they didn't integrate it into their most expensive device. Notice the difference. Gorilla Armor avoids reflections in an impressive way, while Gorilla Glass Victus 2 has much more reflections. Too bad there, Samsung. Hopefully for the next generation you'll finally give us what we deserve. But let's move on. Let's now take this one out from here on out. And in this case, notice that it comes with a much less visible crease. In this case, I think there is indeed an improvement. Although, either way, because of use, it may become more marked. So last generation, you might notice the crease more. It is not an abysmal difference, that should be very clear. But it is a little more concealed. Although I would like to have a new Fold 5 to see if with both new devices there is any difference or not. But it definitely integrates much straighter corners now. So it also gains a little bit more space. And it also has a little bit wider external display, which will certainly make typing a lot easier, which in the past model is quite complex. So let's turn this device on and see what else comes in the box, if anything else. And these are the add-ons that come in the box. A key to remove the tray, a small guide on how to insert the cards, and finally the USB-C cable on both sides. With a length a little short, honestly. And that's it. Remember that the charger must be purchased separately. If you want a case, you must buy it separately. Even though it's a pen compatible, you have to buy it separately. So we're going to put this back away and focus on the cell phone. Okay, I've got the device set up here. So let's get to know it a little bit closer. First, let me tell you about its specs individually, and subsequently I'll do a brief comparison with past generations. It is 5.6 millimeters thick and weighs 239 grams. That may be one of its main changes, so it's a little bit lighter. The external display is 6.3 inches in its diagonal. It has AMOLED technology, although the resolution is HD+ still. This may be another criticism we have for this device, since despite the fact that, let's say, it is not a screen that looks bad really, if we can get pickier considering it's Samsung's most expensive device. Fortunately, it has 120 Hz in its refresh rate, so it's a screen that can deliver. In fact, being stricter in the term, it would be a little higher than HD+, but without reaching full HD+. The internal screen is 7.6 inches in diagonal. It has QXGA plus resolution. It's 2160 by 1856 pixels. It also offers us 120 Hz in its refresh rate. And it offers us a maximum peak brightness of 2600 nits. So it's a slightly brighter display than last generation. And as I was telling you a moment ago, the corners give it a very distinct touch. Its battery is 4400 mAh. That is the same as the last generation. In addition, it does not come with a charger in the box. However, it retains wireless charging and reverse wireless charging that we might get to highlight because while some competitors are much thinner, several of them don't actually have wireless charging or don't have reversible wireless charging, which are technologies that one would expect from a high-end device. So in this regard, still Samsung gives something positive. But here's another disappointment I took away, and that's the camera. The external front camera is 10 megapixels with f-aperture 2.2 and fixed focus. That is, it is exactly the same as last generation, which for a high-end device is not surprising at all. Although particularly in foldables, most front cameras are simple because you can use the rear photo system to take pictures of yourself. So you have a hell of a lot more quality in these cameras. But still, again, being Samsung's most expensive device, we could get picky. And over here you have an internal front-facing camera that's underneath the screen. It's 4 megapixels and it's got f1.8 aperture. Exactly the same as last generation. Obviously, this internal front camera is more focused on video calls, so don't expect to take selfies with that camera, but you will most likely be using it for video calls. And honestly, it has a good quality considering it's underneath the screen. Although you do get to distinguish it, unlike other under-screen cameras that we've seen that are virtually indistinguishable, but their quality is much lower in video. So we don't see anything new there either. And here's an example of this front-facing camera. As you can see, before taking the picture, it looks completely burned out in the background. Afterwards, the result is well balanced, so in that sense, the pictures come out well. Although there is definitely no evolution from one generation to another, but at least it does give us a good quality. And on the back, we'll find the 50 megapixel main camera with optical stabilization, f1.8 aperture. Then the 10 megapixel telephoto camera with f-aperture 2.4 and optical stabilization and 3x optical zoom. And the 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera with f2.2 aperture. But let's take a look at some examples of these cameras. This is the ultra-wide camera where, as I say, there is no evolution. Although Samsung is releasing a new photographic engine that now allows you to capture photos in HDR. So when you view them, there are areas of the photograph that emit more brightness and that gives a much more realistic feel. This is the main camera. Then the 3x optical zoom camera. Again, it does give us good quality. Now you're looking at the 10x zoom, which looks good. This seems to me to be the maximum zoom where I still consider it to have good quality. Although it does let you go up to 30x, but in this case I consider the sharpness to be a little bit exaggerated to try to emphasize the level of detail, which might give a little bit of an odd result in other scenarios. So definitely not the best foldable zoom nor the best zoom in the industry. In that regard, Samsung needs to keep improving. And here I have some portrait pictures simply to give you a glimpse, but it's very clear that for Samsung on this device, the priority is not the camera. Although it gives us nice results, in reality for the price range, it doesn't give us a photographic quality as outstanding as we would have liked. For video recording, it's obviously going to support 8K at 30 frames per second, but only with the main camera. And if you record in 4K at 60 frames per second, now you can do it with all 3 cameras, in fact with the front camera as well. So in video recording, I think it doesn't disappoint. In that sense, it's fine. It will obviously integrate stereo sound, which is now more powerful and of higher quality. This is something Samsung didn't say in its presentation, but these are new speakers that are thinner but still more powerful. And believe me, you can tell the difference. It has 256 or 512 gigabyte or even 1 terabyte versions. In this case, I have the edition of 512 and just turned on I had 5% used, which is more or less 26.8 gigabytes that compared to the large number of options and tools that Samsung integrates, honestly seems to me a good optimization of the internal storage used, which seems to me that in past generations of Samsung was much larger. So here we congratulate Samsung, although after updating all system applications came up to 30.1 gigabytes used, although they still represent 5% of this 512 unit, we will find 12 gigabytes of RAM as the only version. In this sense, it is also something positive, especially considering also the number of functions that Samsung has to take full advantage of all the capabilities of this device. It is absolutely necessary that they integrated this RAM capacity. And finally, the processor is the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, which as a reference gives us 2,251 points in a single core in the Geekbench benchmark, and in multi-core reached almost 7,000 points. Honestly, it is very powerful processor, so also that may also be a change of evolution from one generation to another. While in Antutu it gave us 1,649,858 points. We also consider that a very high score, so the processor is very powerful, but in most applications and options you will not get to take advantage of that power limit. But what do you say we bring in the guests? Let's start with the Galaxy Z Fold6, which is the immediate past generation. As you notice, I think you do notice a difference in the proportion, which is now a wider device. The cameras, although they are exactly the same, have a very different aesthetic. Now they integrate a black ring that projects the light in a different way, but here the drawback that I see is that it is a textured ring, and when I try to clean the cameras with a cloth or with my t-shirt, this frame ends up detaching the small particles of lint, and I actually end up dirtying the camera instead of cleaning it, something that did not happen with the last generation. So that's a small downside I saw from this design change, although it obviously does look different. It will also look very different because of its much straighter lines. It is obviously thinner and lighter, although the difference is not abysmal. Watch, I think that while you do get to notice a thinner device, it's not a dramatic change from one generation to the next. However, if you compare it to the Galaxy Z Fold 4, for example, which is my second guest, note that here you will notice a much more marked difference in thickness, especially in the hinge area. So if you have the Galaxy Z Fold 4, yes, you're going to notice a major evolution in design because it's going to feel much lighter and much thinner. If you have the Galaxy Z Fold 5, it's not going to be such an abysmal difference, although obviously you can get to perceive it, especially more in the proportion at the time of having the keyboard on the screen. I don't know if you can perceive the real difference of all the space you gain on the keyboard. I think this way you can perceive the difference much better. So you have a much wider layout, and in that sense, yes, the experience is abysmally improved on the Galaxy Z Fold 6. And if you have the Galaxy Z Fold 3, which is my third guest, note that this is definitely where you're going to notice the most evolution here. So I would recommend upgrading to the Galaxy Z Fold 6 if you have the Galaxy Z Fold 3, because there will definitely be a very significant jump. For example, in this case, we would see an evolution in the cameras, whereas from the Galaxy Z Fold 4 to the Galaxy Z Fold 6, it's exactly the same cameras back, inside and out. But from the Galaxy Z Fold 3, there will be this important difference also, obviously, that in weight will also be very noticeable, and especially the proportion of the screen. Now notice that previously we had a very thick bezel on the left side along with the hinge. So there was really very little space available for the keyboard. Notice how there was so little space left on the keyboard that it was often necessary to move the position of the keyboard to try to get a little bit more comfortable typing. In this new generation, there is much more space. So definitely that jumping from the Galaxy Z Fold 3 to the Galaxy Z Fold 6 is a totally recommended change if you like the experience and want to improve it by a lot. Also, obviously, in the last generation, there was still a small gap when folding the device. In this current generation, it no longer does. In fact, if you have the Galaxy Z Fold 4, you might also notice this change from this past generation to the current generation. Anyway, this has been a quick first look at this device. I hope you liked this video. We will have the video review available soon so you can get to know it in more depth, since many of its new features are focused on the software. And you should know that the past version is also going to receive that update. I hope you liked this video. If you liked it, you know you can let us know, and we'll see you next time.